I struggle to understand why people are still wrapping their heads around the fact that people are getting old, and this is also a business. This is not a playground. This is a business where people are going to get fired and people are going to get punished for not doing their jobs correctly and not taking advantage of what they can take advantage of. What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Retro, and I'm back with another random rants show. Um, Today I wanted to talk about the Wyatt Sicks. Now, the history of the Wyatt Sicks, just dates all the way back to Bray Wyatt's return, right? Where he was posting cryptic messages every week. He was just hinting at his return constantly, and just he was silent on social media a lot, but he was constantly hinting at his return. And when he finally returned at Extreme Rules, we can argue is one of the most talked about returns in the history of the sport. Because if we talk about creative minds, we talk about people who are just set their own plants and their own stones in the business. Bray Wyatt is at the very top of that list. Now, when Bray Wyatt died, it was such a tragic thing for everybody. It was also something that was very, very unexpected. Um, you would think a guy like that is pretty immortal, and it's just, it's just talking about it makes me pretty sad. But Bray Wyatt, he was such an incredible performer, incredible storyteller, incredible just asset to the business. Like he was just such a he was one of the greatest characters that wrestling's ever created. But yeah, so what was I gonna say? Okay, so the Wyatt Six are like his kind of like recreation essentially, and Bo Dallas kind of wanted to, honor his brother a little bit with the whole Uncle Howdy stuff because Uncle Howdy was somebody who was in partnership with Bray Wyatt, and Bo Dallas had an idea to kind of bring all the people who he felt like would relate to him, and a Nikki Cross, and a Joe Gacy, and a Dexter Loomis, and a Rowan who was a part of the original Wyatt family, right? And they got together, and when they got together and they finally, came to WWE and stuff, it was a big thing, right? Like everybody was talking about it. They took out Chad Gable. We couldn't wait to see what happened next, right? And storytelling was still on point. Just the whole thing with the group was on point. Everything was on point until after the rivalry with the Final Testament, which involved Karrion Cross and the Authors of Pain, right? The Authors of Pain. Because we had thought that was like the perfect collaboration. Well, not collaboration, but the perfect rivalry for the group, considering uh not Bray Wyatt, Bo Dallas and Karrion Cross do have a lot in common. And we had figured that something was kind of it felt like some kind of hidden chemistry they had at a point where it would make a great rivalry. So they got the Miz in there, and it seemed like something that was going to be fun, right? And then after that, after the Final Testament won their whole rivalry thing, that's when it went downhill. The Wyatt Six went on television for weeks. They didn't give us any updates about them. Nobody was said to be injured. It was just a whole shit show of just things that were just like not even relatively just cool, right? And so they come back on TV, they come to SmackDown, and I'm said to believe that they had targeted the tag team division over there on SmackDown, right? They targeted the tag team division. Also, were the time where the Street Profits were the tag team champions, beat them up every week, and they did it until they got what they wanted, which eventually was a title shot. Now, they got their title shot, they won. I'm assuming that they turned heels because I've seen Eric Rowan get involved a couple times. And from there, it just was like, I still struggle to understand why those tag team titles were put on them, considering that they were going to go for a whole nother tag team in AAA. But that's a whole nother point to make. Um, the Wyatt Six were really not set in stone with caring about the tag team division at all. And I say that because the only really good tag team championship memorable thing that they had was at SummerSlam when they had that six tag team ladder match for the championships, which probably was one of the best matches on that card. Um, had some great spots. I'm sure everybody in the crowd kind of enjoyed it, and from there it was just like they were just holding the championships as kind of like trophies for what they could do until they had gotten to the feud with the MFTs, and eventually they lost those titles. And the MFTs things that just was an accident waiting to happen, considering the fact that there was no compatibility and there was no chemistry between the two, right? And I know everybody did the best they could, but I feel like everybody knew that the Wyatt Sicks were not something that was going to be a long-term thing, especially with the fact that they're not really shown on TV a lot. They don't really do promos anymore. They don't really wrestle a lot, so people didn't see them as a pretty compatible thing long term, right? It sounds like a relationship, but yeah, they didn't see them as like a thing to where they were draws, and they didn't see them where I've made my point about that already. I'm still new to this, so please bear with me when it comes to my talking. It's gonna be like a lot of just weird talking points where I'm pausing a lot and stuff like that. Here's my personal take on the Wyatt Sicks. Like I said, like before about the Wyatt Sicks, I don't know if y'all remember, but they are an accident waiting to happen, right? They were an accident waiting to happen. Nobody really cared when they returned on SmackDown or they got traded to SmackDown. People stopped caring, about the promos. They even stopped caring. WWE noticed that people stopped caring at the moment that they bought them to AAA to fight for other tag team titles, because it really didn't make sense at that point. And I had stopped caring specifically because I was under the mindset that they were just kind of forcing the Wyatt Sicks on us a lot of times when they didn't need to. And Bray Wyatt was constantly being brought up in the conversations to kind of make us care, right? And you can't force me to care about something that you're constantly forcing on us. Because the thing about the Wyatt Sicks is that Bo Dallas, he can cut a very cryptic promo, but those shits only last so long, especially when you're trying to mimic another wrestler in his honor, right? It can kind of set somebody to overdrive. And the Wyatt Sicks, I feel like they just weren't. They eventually, it wasn't a question if they were going to get fired, it was when they were going to get fired or released. Because what were they really providing? Like, what were they providing in a long-term stance? Like, what were they doing in a long-term stance? Like, they weren't people who we would say have somebody in the main event scene. We wouldn't care about them. We wouldn't even notice they were on TV every week. We wouldn't notice that they were people who were honoring somebody. We just wouldn't notice it at some point. And I feel like I do wish them the best at the end of the day. The Wyatt Sicks, they did great with what they had, but it just wasn't enough. But I do wish there was a lot more creative space on SmackDown to where everybody had a chance to shine instead of just the main eventers being highlighted 24/7. And I do wish that the Wyatt Sicks had a chance to really utilize their full potential and what they could do as a group. But that's all I really have to say for now. I'll talk about the multitude of other releases later. I'm under the impression that I'm gonna be filming a lot of these random rants videos, but yeah, I try my best with the speaking. I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. And yeah, I love you guys, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.